Hello everyone, it's Hannah making an uncharacteristic appearance for you because I would like to read to you about a topic I've become quite interested in. I say it as if I, only got into it recently. But theology has always been an important part of my life, and even if you're not a believer, I hope you can take from it the extraordinary creativity that can be found in mythology and theology. I'm going to read to you the Wikipedia page as of the 27th of April 2017. Satanism. It's a bit of a tricky subject for a lot of people. Naturally, if you're uncomfortable, I recommend going to another video, but if you're curious or just want somebody to talk nonsense to you for a little while, then perhaps you'd like to pull up a chair and I'll begin. Satanism is a group of ideological and philosophical beliefs based on the character of Satan. Contemporary religious practice of Satanism began with the founding of the Church of Satan in 1966, although a few historical precedents exist. Prior to public practice, Satanism existed primarily as an accusation by various Christian groups towards perceived ideological opponents, rather than a self-identity. Satanism and the concept of Satan has also been used by artists and entertainers. Accusations that various groups have been practicing Satanism have been made throughout much of Christian history. During the Middle Ages, the Inquisition attached to the Roman Catholic Church alleged that various heretical Christian sects and groups, such as the Knights Templar and the Cathars, performed secret satanic rituals. In the subsequent early modern period, belief in a widespread satanic conspiracy of witches resulted in mass trials of alleged witches across Europe and the North American colonies. Accusations that satanic conspiracies were active and that they were behind events such as the French Revolution continued to be made in Christendom during the 18th to the 20th century. In the 1980s and 1990s, the satanic ritual abuse hysteria spread through the United States and United Kingdom amidst unfounded fears that groups of Satanists were regularly sexually abusing and murdering children in their rites. Oh boy. That's staggeringly. In virtually all of these cases, there is no corroborating evidence that any of those accused of Satanism were actually practitioners of a satanic religion or guilty of the allegations levelled at them. Since the 19th century, various small religious groups have emerged that self-identify as Satanists or use satanic iconography. Satanist groups that appeared after the 1960s are wildly diverse, but two major trends are theistic Satanism and atheistic Satanism. Theistic Satanists venerate Satan as a supernatural deity, viewing him not as omnipotent but rather as a patriarch. In contrast, atheist Satanists regard Satan as a symbol of human traits. Contemporary religious Satanism is predominantly an American phenomenon, the ideas spreading elsewhere with the effects of globalization and the internet. The internet spreads awareness of other Satanists and is also the main battleground for Satanist disputes. Satanism started to reach Central and Eastern Europe in the 1990s, in time with the fall of the Soviet Union, and most noticeably in Poland and Lithuania, predominantly Roman Catholic countries. I have a definition for you. In their study of Satanism, the religious studies scholars Asbjørn Drendahl, I hope I got that right, James R. Lewis, that was a little easier, and Jesper A. Peterson, stated that the term Satanism has a history of being a designation made by people against those whom they dislike. It is a term used for othering. The concept of Satanism is an invention of Christianity, for it relies upon the figure of Satan, a character deriving from Christian mythology. Elsewhere, Peterson noted that Satanism was something others do very differently, as a self-designation. Eugene Gallagher noted that, as commonly used, Satanism was usually a polemical, not a descriptive term. Etymology, 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 etymology. The word Satan, Satan, was not originally a proper name, but rather an ordinary noun meaning the adversary. In this context, it appears at several points in the Old Testament. For instance, the book of Samuel, David is presented as the Satan, adversary, of the Philistines, while in the book of Numbers the term appears as a verb when God sent an angel to Satan to oppose Balaam. Prior to the composition of the New Testament, the idea developed within Jewish communities that Satan was the name of an angel who had rebelled against God and had been cast out of heaven along with his followers. This account would be incorporated into contemporary texts like the Book of Enoch. This Satan was then featured in parts of the New Testament, where he was presented as a figure who tempted humans to commit sin. In the book of Matthew and the book of Luke, he attempted to tempt Jesus of Nazareth, as the latter fasted in the wilderness. The word Satanism, Satanism, Satanism was adopted into the English from the French Satanisme. The terms Satanism and Satanist are first recorded as appearing in the English and French languages during the 16th century, where they were used by Christian groups to attack other rival Christian groups. In a Roman Catholic tract of 1565, the author condemns the heresies, blasphemies, and Satanisms of the Protestants. In an Anglican work of 1559, Anabaptists and other Protestant sects are condemned as swarms of Satanists. As used in this manner, the term Satanism was not used to claim that people literally worshipped Satan, but rather presented the view that through deviating from what the speaker or writer regarded as the true variant of Christianity, they were regarded as being essentially in league with the devil. It was only in the late 19th century that it came to be applied in English to individuals who were believed to consciously and deliberately venerate Satan. This latter meaning has appeared earlier in the Swedish language. The Lutheran bishop Laurentius Paulinus Gothus, had described devil-worshipping sorcerers as Satanista in his Ethica Christiana, produced between 1615 and 1630. Antagonism towards Satanism. Expected, I suppose. When you can't find a black sheep, get a black goat. Historical and anthropological research suggests that nearly all societies have developed the idea of a sinister and anti-human force that can hide itself within society. This commonly involves a belief in witches, a group of individuals who invert the norms of their society and seek to harm the community, for instance, by engaging in incest, murder, and cannibalism. Allegations of witchcraft may have different causes and serve different functions within a society. For instance, they may serve to uphold social norms, to heighten the tension and existing conflicts between individuals, or to scapegoat, black goat, scapegoat, certain individuals for various social problems. Another contributing factor to the idea of Satanism is the concept that there is an agent of misfortune and evil who operates on a cosmic scale, something usually associated with a strong form of ethical dualism that divides the world into two forces of good and evil. The earliest such entity known as this is Ankara Manu, a figure that appears in the Persian religion of Zoroastrianism. This concept was also embraced by Judaism and early Christianity, and although it was soon marginalized within Jewish thought, it gained increasing importance within early Christian understandings of the cosmos. While early Christian ideas of the devil were not well developed, it gradually adapted and expanded through the creation of folklore, art, theological treatises, and morality tales, thus providing the character with a range of extra-biblical associations. As Christianity expanded through the Middle East, North America, Africa, and Europe, it came into contact with a variety of other religions, which it regarded as pagan. Christian theologians claimed that gods and goddesses venerated by these pagans were not genuine divinities, but were actually demons. However, They did not believe that pagans were deliberately devil worshippers, instead claiming that they were simply misguided. In Christian iconography, the devil and demons were given physical traits of figures from classical mythology. One that you might recognize is the god Pan, fauns and satyrs, men with horns, cloven hooves, and tails. Those Christian groups regarded as heretics by the Roman Catholic Church were treated differently, with theologians arguing that they were deliberately worshipping the devil. This was accompanied by claims that such individuals engaged in incestuous sexual orgies, murdered infants, and committed acts of cannibalism, all stock accusations that previously had been levelled at Christians themselves by the Roman Empire. The first recorded example of such an accusation being made within the Western Christianity took place in Toulouse in 1022, 44 years before 1066. Poor Harold. 2 clerics were tried for allegedly venerating a demon. Throughout the Middle Ages, this accusation would be applied to a wide range of Christian heretical groups, including the Paulicians, Bogomils, Cathars, Waldenesians, and the Hussites. The Knights Templar were accused of worshipping an idol known as Baphomet, with Lucifer having appeared at their meetings in the form of a cat. As well as these Christian groups, these claims were made about Europe's Jewish community. In the 13th century, there were also references made to a group of Luciferians led by a woman called Lucadis, which hoped to see Satan rule in heaven. References to this group continued into the 14th century, although historians studying the allegations concur that Luciferians were likely a fictitious invention. Within Christian thought, the idea developed that certain individuals could make pacts with Satan. This may have emerged after observing that pacts with gods and goddesses played a role in various pre-Christian belief systems, or that such pacts were also made as part of the Christian cult of saints. Another possibility is that it derives from a misunderstanding of Augustine of Hippo's condemnation of augury in his On Christian Doctrine, written in the late 14th century. Written in the late 4th century. Here, he stated that people who consulted augurs were entering quasi-pacts or covenants with demons. The idea of a diabolical pact made with demons was popularized across Europe in the story of Faust, likely based in part on the real-life Johann Georg Faust. As the late medieval gave way to the early modern period, European Christendom experienced a schism between the established Roman Catholic Church and the breakaway Protestant movement. Schism. I like that word. Schism. It's like scissors. Sorry. I'm getting distracted. Both Catholics and Protestants accused each other of deliberately being in league with Satan. It was this context that the terms Satanist and Satanism emerged. The early modern period also saw a fear of Satanists reach its historical apogee in the form of the witch trials of the 14th through to the 18th centuries. This came about as the accusations which had been levelled at medieval heretics, among them that the devil worship, were applied to pre-existing ideas of the witch or practitioner of malevolent magic. The idea of a conspiracy of satanic witches was developed by educated elites, although the concept of malevolent witchcraft was a widespread part of popular belief and folkloric ideas about the night witch, the wild hunt, and the dance of the fairies. All of these were incorporated into it. The earliest trials took place in northern Italy and France, before spreading out to other areas of Europe and to Britain's North American colonies, being carried out by legal authorities in both Catholic and Protestant regions. Between 30,000 and 50,000 individuals were executed as accused satanic witches. Most historians agree that the majority of those persecuted in these witch trials were innocent of any involvement in devil worship. However, in the summary of the evidence for their trials, the historians Geoffrey Scarr and John Gallo thought that, without a doubt, some of those accused in the trials had been guilty of employing magic in an attempt to harm their enemies, and thus were genuinely guilty of witchcraft. In the 17th century in Sweden, a number of highway robbers and other outlaws living in the forests informed judges that they venerated Satan because he provided more practical assistance than God. The historian of religion Massimo Introvigne, again that's difficult to pronounce, regarded these practices as folkloric Satanism. During the 18th century, gentlemen's social clubs became increasingly prominent in Britain and Ireland, among the most secretive of which were the Hellfire clubs, which were first reported in the 1720s. The most famous of these groups was the Order of the Knights of St. Francis, which was founded circa 1750 by the aristocrat Sir Francis Dashwood. A number of contemporary press sources portrayed these as gatherings of atheist rakes, where Christianity was mocked and toasts were made to the devil. Beyond these sensationalist accounts, which may not be regarded as accurate portrayals of actual events, little is known about the activities of the Hellfire Club. Introvigne suggested that they may have engaged in a form of playful Satanism, in which Satan was evoked to show a daring contempt for conventional morality by individuals who neither believed in his literal existence nor wanted to pay homage to him. The French Revolution of 1789 dealt a blow to the hegemony of the Roman Catholic Church in this part of Europe, and soon a number of Catholic authors began making claims that it had been masterminded by a conspiratorial group of Satanists. Among the first to do so was a French Catholic priest, Jean-Baptiste Fiard, who publicly claimed that a wide range of individuals, from the Jacobins to tarot card readers, were part of a satanic conspiracy. Fiard's ideas were furthered by Alexis Vincent Charles Berbigeois, who devoted a lengthy book to this conspiracy theory. He claimed that Satanists had supernatural powers, allowing them to curse people and to shapeshift into both cats and fleas. Although most of his contemporaries regarded Berbigeois Stanislas de Goyata, who used them for the base of his book, The Temple of Satan. In the early 20th century, the British novelist Dennis Wheatley produced a range of influential novels in which his protagonists battled satanic groups. At the same time, non-fiction authors like and Rollo Ahmed published books claiming that Satanist groups practiced black magic and were still active across Europe and the world, although they provided no evidence that this was the case. During the 1950s, various British tabloid newspapers repeated such basing their accounts on the allegations of one woman, Sarah Jackson, who claimed to have been a member of such a group. In 1973, the British Christian Doreen Irvine published From Witchcraft to Christ, in which she claimed to have been a member of a satanic group that gave her supernatural powers, the ability to levitate, and presumably turn into a flea, before she escaped and embraced Christianity. In the United States during the 1960s and 70s, various Christian preachers, the most famous being Michael Warneke, in his 1972 book, The Satan Seller, claimed that they had been members of satanic groups who carried out sex rituals and animal sacrifices before converting to Christianity. According to Gareth Medway, in his historical examination of Satanism, these stories were a series of inventions by insecure people and hack writers, each one based on a previous story, exaggerated a little more each time. A little more, a little more, a little more each time. Other publications made allegations of Satanism against historical figures. The 1970s saw the publication of the Romanian Protestant preacher Richard Wurbrandt's book, in which he argued, without corroborating evidence, that the socio-political theorist Karl Marx had been a Satanist. This next bit is very cheerful. It's called Satanic Ritual Abuse Hysteria. At the end of the 20th century, a moral panic developed around claims regarding a devil-worshipping cult that made use of sexual abuse, murder, and cannibalism in its rituals, with children being among its victims. Initially, the alleged perpetrators of such crimes were labelled witches, although the term Satanist was soon adopted as a favoured alternative, and the phenomenon itself came to be called the Satanism Scare. Promoters of the claims alleged that there was a conspiracy of organised Satanists who occupied many different professions, from the police to politicians, and that they had been powerful enough to cover up all of their crimes, except, presumably, the ones that they were being accused of when the satanic ritual abuse hysteria was a thing. One of the other primary sources of the scare was Michelle Remembers, a 1980s book by the Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pastor, in which he detailed what he claimed were the repressed memories of his patient and wife, Michelle Smith. Smith had claimed that as a child she had been abused by her family in satanic rituals in which babies were sacrificed and Satan himself appeared. sexually abusing the children in their care during satanic rituals. The allegations resulted in a lengthy and expensive trial in which all of the accused would eventually be cleared. The publicity generated by the case resulted in similar allegations being made in various other parts of the United States. A prominent aspect of the Satanic scare was the claim by those in the developing anti-Satanism movement that any child's claim about satanic ritual abuse must be true, because children would not lie. Although some involved in the anti-Satanism movement were from Jewish and secular backgrounds, a central part was played by the fundamentalist and evangelical forms of Christianity. In particular, Pentecostalism, with Christian groups holding conferences and producing books and videotapes to promote the belief in the conspiracy. Various figures in the law enforcement also came to be promoters of the conspiracy theory, with such cult cops holding various conferences to promote it. The scare was later imported to the United Kingdom through visiting evangelicals and became popular among some of the country's social workers, resulting in a range of accusations and trials across Britain. In the late 1980s, the Satanic scare had lost its impetus following increasing skepticism about such allegations. A number of those who had been convicted in perpetrating satanic ritual abuse saw their convictions overturned. In 1990, an agent of the US Federal Bureau of Investigation, Ken Lanning, revealed that he had investigated 300 allegations of satanic ritual abuse and found no evidence for Satanism or ritualistic activity in any of them. In the UK, the Department of Health commissioned an anthropologist, Jean LaFontaine, to examine the allegations of satanic ritualistic abuse. She noted that while approximately half did reveal evidence of genuine abuse of children, none revealed any evidence that Satanist groups had been involved or that any murders had taken place. She noted 3 examples in which lone individuals engaged in child molestation and had created a ritual performance to facilitate their sexual acts with the intent of frightening their victims and justifying their actions, but none of these child molesters were involved in wider Satanist groups. Here's the bit that I actually wanted to read. Artistic Satanism, notably literary Satanism. From the late 17th through to the 19th century, the character of Satan was increasingly rendered unimportant in Western philosophy and ignored in Christian theology, while in folklore he came to be seen as foolish rather than a menacing figure. The development of new values in the Age of Enlightenment, in particular those of reason and individualism, contributed to a shift in how many Europeans viewed Satan. In this context, a number of individuals took Satan out of the traditional Christian narrative and reread and reinterpreted him in light of their own time and in their own interests, in turn generating new and different portraits of Satan. The shifting view of Satan owes many of its origins to John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost, 1667, in which Satan features as the protagonist. Milton was a Puritan and had never intended for his depiction of Satan to be a sympathetic one. However, in portraying Satan as a victim of his own pride, who rebelled against God, he humanized him and also allowed him to be interpreted as a rebel against tyranny. This was how Milton's Satan was understood by later readers like the publisher Joseph Johnson and the anarchist philosopher William Godwin, who reflected it in his 1793 book, Inquiry Concerning Political Justice. Paradise Lost gained a wide readership in the 18th century, both in Britain and in continental Europe, where it had been translated into French by Voltaire. Milton thus became a central character in rewriting Satanism, and would be viewed by many later religious Satanists as a de facto Satanist. The 19th century saw the emergence of what has been termed literary Satanism or romantic Satanism. Romantic with a capital R, a romantic. All about rivers and trees and mountains and lakes and storms, and much less about chocolate. According to Van Looyink, my goodness, I'm not doing well with these names. This cannot be seen as a coherent movement with a single voice, but rather as a post factum identified groups, sometimes widely divergent authors, among whom a similar theme is found. For the literary Satanist, Satan was depicted as benevolent and sometimes a heroic figure, within the more sympathetic portrayals proliferating in art and poetry of many romanticist and decadent figures. For these individuals, Satanism was not a religious belief or a religious activity, but rather a strategic use of a symbol and a character as part of an artistic and political expression. Among the Romanticist poets to adopt this view of Satan was the English poet Percy Shelley, who had been influenced by Milton. In his poem Leon and Cintha, Shelley praised the serpent, a reference to Satan, as a force for good in the universe. Another was Shelley's fellow poet Lord Byron, who included satanic themes in his 1821 play Cain, which is a dramatization of the biblical story of Cain and Abel. These more positive portrayals also developed in France. One example was the 1823 work Eloi by Alfred de Vigny. Satan was also adopted by the French poet Victor Hugo, who made the character fall from heaven a central aspect of his La Fin de Satan, in which he outlined his own cosmology. Although the likes of Shelley and Byron promoted a positive image of Satan in their work, there is no evidence that either of them performed religious rites to venerate him, and thus it is problematic to regard them as religious Satanists. Radical left-wing political ideas have been spread by the American Revolution of 1765 through to 83, and the French Revolution of 1789 through to 99, and the figure of Satan, who was interpreted as having rebelled against the tyranny imposed by God, was an appealing one for many of the radical leftists of the period. For them, Satan was a symbol for the struggle against tyranny, injustice, and oppression, a mythical figure of rebellion for an age of revolution, a larger-than-life individual for an age of individualism, a free thinker in an age struggling several of his writings. Another prominent 19th century anarchist, the Russian Mikhail Bakunin, similarly described the figure of Satan as the eternal rebel, the first free thinker, and the emancipator of worlds in his book God and the State. These ideas likely inspired the America's feminist activist Moses Harman to name his anarchist periodical Lucifer the Light-Bearer. The idea of this leftist Satan declined during the 20th century, although it was utilized on occasion by authorities within the Soviet Union, who portrayed Satan as a symbol of freedom and equality. Equality, 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 equality. In music, black metal has often been connected with Satanism, in part for the lyrical content of several bands and their frequent use of imagery often tied to the left-hand path beliefs, such as the inverted pentagram. More often than not, musicians associating themselves with black metal say they do not believe in legitimate satanic ideology and often profess to being atheists, agnostics, or religious skeptics. In some instances, followers of right-hand path religions use satanic references for entertainment purposes and shock value. Most of black metal's first wave bands only used Satanism for shock value. One of the few exceptions is Merciful Fate singer King Diamond, who follows LaVeyan Satanism and whom Michael Moynihan calls one of the only performers of the 80s satanic metal who was more than just a poser using a devilish image for shock value. One early precursor to satanic metal was 1969's rock album Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls, which contained numerous references to Satanism, including Hail Satan, Hail Satan, Hail Satan, Hail Satan, that reappeared in later satanic rock music. Glenn Benton, vocalist and bassist of the band Deicide, once openly claimed to be a practitioner of theistic Satanism and has spoken publicly to profess staunch anti-Christian sentiment. This controversial dissection frontman, John Nodevite, that's an O, not Nodevite. You're getting used to this, I promise. And the more used to it you are, the less you'll judge me for it. Alright? Anyway, John openly spoke about his chaos Gnostic satanic beliefs, being a member of the misanthropic Luciferian order, and called his band the Sonic Propaganda Unit of the MLO. Norwegian black metal artists such as Euronymous from Mayhem and Infernus from Gorgoroth have also identified themselves as Satanists and actively promote their beliefs. Numerous church burnings that covered parts of Norway in the early 1990s were also attributed to youths involved in the black metal movement, which included people promoting theistic Satanist beliefs and strong anti-LaVeyan attitudes. However, the legitimacy of such actions as satanic endeavours rather than simply rebellious actions done for publicity is something that has been doubted by even some of those who contribute to the genre. Finally, we have religious Satanism, the least common and most widely referenced, I suspect. Rather than being one single form of religious Satanism, there are instead multiple different religious Satanisms, each with different ideas about what being a Satanist entails. Durandal, Lewis, and Peterson believed that it was not a single movement but rather a milieu. They nevertheless referred to it as a new religious movement. They believed that there was a family resemblance that united all of the varying groups in this milieu. And the most of them were self-religions. They argued that there was a set of features that was common to the groups in the Satanic milieu. These were the positive use of the term Satanist as a designation, an emphasis on individualism, a genealogy that connects them to other Satanic groups, a transgressive and antinomian stance, a self-perception as an elite, and an embrace of values such as pride, self-reliance, and productive non-conformity. Durandal, Lewis, and Peterson argued that the groups within the Satanic milieu could be divided into three groups again: reactive Satanists, rationalist Satanists, and esoteric Satanists. They saw reactive Satanism as encompassing popular Satanism, inverted Christianity, and symbolic rebellion, and noted that it situates itself in opposition to society, while at the same time conforming to society's perspective of evil. Rationalist Satanism is used to describe the trend in the Satanic milieu, which is aesthetic, skeptical, materialistic, and Epicurean. Esoteric Satanism instead applied to those forms which are theistic and draws upon ideas from other forms of Western esotericism, modern paganism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. The first person to promote a Satanist philosophy was the Pole Stanislav. I'm not going to be able to do this one. Ladies and gentlemen, and those in between, Przyspiszewski. There's more Y's and Z's in there than I've ever seen in another word. I'm not racist, I promise. Who promoted a social Darwinian ideology. The use of the term Lucifer was also taken up by French ceremonial magician Eliphas Levi, who has been described as a romantic Satanist. During his younger days, Levi used Lucifer in much the same manner as the literary Romantics. As he moved towards a more politically conservative outlook in later life, he retained the use of the term, but instead applied it as to what he believed was morally neutral facets of the absolute. In his book, Dogma and the Ritual of High Magic, published in 2 volumes between 1854 and 1856, Levi offered the symbol of Baphomet. He claimed that this was a figure who had been worshipped by the Knights Templar. According to Intravene, this image gave the Satanists their most popular symbol ever. Levi was not the only occultist who wanted to use the term Lucifer without adopting the term Satan. In a similar way, the early Theosophical Society held the view that Lucifer was the force that aided humanity's awakening into its own spiritual nature. In keeping with this view, the Society began production of a journal titled Lucifer. Satan was also used within the esoteric system propounded by Danish occultist Carl William Hansen, who used the pen name Ben Kadosh. Hansen was involved in a variety of esoteric groups, including Martinism, Freemasonry, and the Ordo Templi Orientis, drawing on ideas from various groups to establish his own philosophy. In one pamphlet he provided a Luciferian interpretation of Freemasonry. Kadosh's work left little influence outside of Denmark. Both during his life and after it, the British occultist Aleister Crowley has been widely described as a Satanist, usually by detractors. Crowley stated that he did not consider himself a Satanist, nor did he worship Satan, as he did not accept the Christian worldview in which Satan is believed to exist. He nevertheless utilized satanic imagery, for instance by describing himself as the Beast 666, 666, and referring to the whore of Babylon in his work, while in later life he sent anti-Christmas cards to his friends. Darendel, Lewis, and Peterson noted that despite the fact that Crowley was not a Satanist, he in many ways embodies the pre-Satanist esoteric discourse on Satan and Satanism through his lifestyle and philosophy, with his image and the thought becoming an important influence on the later development of religious Satanism. In 1928, the Fraternitas Saturni, or the FS, was established in Germany. Its founder, Eugen Groscher, published the Satanische Magie, or Satanic Magic, that same year. The group connected Satan to Saturn, claiming that the planet related to the sun in the same manner that Lucifer relates to the human world. In 1932, an esoteric group known as the Brotherhood of the Golden Arrow was established in Paris, France, by Maria de Nagloska, a Russian occultist who had fled to France following the Russian Revolution. She promoted a theology centered on what she called the third term of the Trinity, consisting of Father, Son, and sex, the latter of which she deemed the most important. Her early disciples underwent what she called the Satanic instruction, and included models of unart students recruited from Bohemian circles. The Golden Arrow disbanded after Nagloska abandoned it in 1936. According to LaVeyan, hers was a quite complicated Satanism, built on a complex philosophical vision of the world, of which little would survive the initiator. In 1969, a satanic group based in Toledo, Ohio, part of the United States, came to public attention. Called the Our Lady of Endor Coven, it was led by a man named Herbert Sloan, who described his satanic tradition as Ophite Cultus Satanus, and alleged that it had been established in the 1940s. The group offered a Gnostic interpretation of the world in which the Creator God was regarded as evil, and the biblical serpent represented as a force for good who had delivered salvation to humanity in the Garden of Eden. Sloan's claims that his group had a 1940s origin remains unproven. It may be that it is falsely claimed older origins to make it appear older than Anton LaVeyan's church, which was established in 1966. None of these groups had any real impact on the emergence of later satanic milieu texts in the 1960s. Rationalistic Satanism. LaVeyan Satanism and the Church of Satan. Anton LaVey, who has been referred to as the father of Satanism, synthesized his religion through the establishment of the Church of Satan in 1966 and the publication of the Satanic Bible in 1969. LaVeyan's teachings promoted indulgence, vital existence, undefiled wisdom, kindness to those who deserve it, responsibility to the responsible, and an eye for an eye code of ethics, while shunning abstinence based on guilt, spirituality, unconditional love, pacifism, equality, herd mentality, and scapegoating. In LaVeyan's view, the Satanist is a carnal, physical, and pragmatic being, where enjoyment of physical existence and an undiluted view of worldly truth are promoted as the core values of Satanists, propagating a naturalistic worldview that sees mankind as animals existing in an amoral universe. LaVeyan believed that the ideal Satanist should be individualistic and nonconformist, rejecting what he calls the colourless existence that mainstream society sought to impose on those living within it. He praised the human ego for encouraging an individual's pride, self-respect, self-realization, and accordingly believed in satisfying the ego's desires. He expressed the view that self-indulgence was a desirable trait, and that hate and aggression were not wrong or undesirable emotions, but that they were necessary and advantageous for survival. Accordingly, he praised the 7 deadly sins as virtues, which were beneficial for the individual. The anthropologist Jean Lafontaine highlighted in an article that appears in The Black Flame, a true satanic society, one which the population consists of free-spirited, well-armed, fully conscious, self-disciplined individuals who will neither need nor tolerate any external entity protecting them or telling them what they can and cannot do. Sociologist James R. Lewis noted that LaVeyan was directly responsible for the genesis of Satanism as a serious religious as opposed to purely literary movement. Scholars agree that there is no reliably documented case of satanic continuity prior to the founding of the Church of Satan. It was the first organized church in modern times to be devoted to the figure of Satan, and according to Faxneld and Peterson, the church represented the first public, highly visible, and long-lasting organization which propounded a coherent satanic discourse. LaVeyan's book, The Satanic Bible, has been described as the most important document to influence contemporary Satanism. The book contains core principles of Satanism and is considered the foundation of its philosophy and dogma. Peterson noted that it is in many ways the central text of the satanic milieu, with Lapp similarly testifying to its dominant position within the wider satanic movement. David G. Bromley calls it iconoclastic and the best known and most influential statement of satanic theology. Eugene V. Gallagher says that Satanists use LaVeyan's writings as lenses through which they view themselves, their group, and the cosmos. He also states, with clear-eyed appreciation of the true human nature, a love of ritual and pageantry, and a flair for mockery. LaVeyan's Satanic Bible promulgated a gospel of self-indulgence that, he argued, anyone who dispassionately considers the facts would embrace. The anthropologist Jean Lafontaine described it as having been both elitist and anarchist. It also cites one of the occult bookshop owners who referred to the church's approach as an anarchistic hedonism. The invention of Satanism, Durandal and Peterson theorized that LaVeyan viewed this religion as an antinomianian self-religion for productive misfits with a cynically carnivalesque take on life and no supernaturalism. The sociologist of religion, James R. Lewis, even described LaVeyan Satanism as a blend of Epicureanism and Ayn Rand's philosophy, flavoured with a pinch of ritual magic. The historian of religion Matthias Gardel regarded LaVeyan as a rational ideology of egoistic hedonism and self-preservation, while Neville Drury characterized LaVeyan Satanism as a religion of self-indulgence. It has also been described as an institutionalism of Machiavellian self-interest. I've had enough of this video. It has gone on so long. And as a hedonist, there are other things that press for my attention. I hope you found this to be an informative and interesting experience.